go. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to April Coach Consultation Hour. I know April, it feels like spring. It looks like spring. It's looked like spring for a while now. We've been in spring, but I'm noticing like our lilac bushes are starting to bloom, which I love to smell and ground myself with the scents and the sights and the physical sensations and all that. How's everybody doing? We just chatted with Mary about how she's healing up. Any other any other exciting news from the team?
I've got big news. I'm happy to share.
Tell us.
Um, Both of my daughters are pregnant and expecting, and we found out that they're both having girls, and so they're due like 8 weeks apart. So by
Wow.
Thanksgiving, we will have two new babies in the family.
Awesome. Yay, that's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm very jazzed. But Luca is, he's two now and he's a rough and tumble. He's a guy's guy. He monster trucks and he just throws everything and wrestles. And so it's going to be fun to see him adapting to like, his more gentle side.
Yes. Goodness, that'll be a fun change. And
Yeah.
good for him. Gonna have two. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yes.
Thank you. This is the fun stage in life. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
they're the best.
And it's really funny because I know so many people who have sons, and I don't believe in this in general, but named Lucas, Luca, and they're all just what you described. There's something about that name that they're like out there, in various ways, but charming.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so.
Keep you busy though.
Yes. But you can't turn around for a second. He just helps himself to, if he wants to go outside, he just goes and unlocks the door and just goes. And I'm like, hello, where are you going?
Yeah. Yeah, my friend in California, it's her grandson, and he arrives at the house with a list of what he's going to be doing with his grandparents. I mean, he's setting up the world. It's amazing. And he's like 3 years old.
Yeah. My mom and stepdad watch Luca one day a week because, it takes a village to, to raise them. And yeah, he's the boss. He tells them he'll like make them go outside and he's like, okay. And then he shuts the door and he's like, we're gonna play out here. Like he decides. He's the
Yeah.
boss. It's hilarious because we all listen.
Oh,
Might have a rude awakening when two girls show up on the scene.
yeah. When he has a sister to run him around.
Absolutely.
Not the boss anymore. That'll be interesting. I'm not.
Tammy, your kids are local too, aren't they? They're near
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, I have one in Highlands Ranch. She's about 2 miles away, and then my oldest is in Littleton. She's about 4 miles away.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That will
Yeah.
be very fun for you and very fun for them to be growing up together, the cousins, to be so close.
Yeah, absolutely. I know now I'm rethinking my life choices. I'm like, do I want to work full time or do I want to maybe work less and help take care of my babies more? I don't know.
Yeah.
Big decisions ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, all these great decisions. It's a good problem to have.
It is. Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's so exciting. I'm always curious about names. Like you said, Susan, it's like we choose names with intention, right? Like there's usually a reason why, and we hope that they'll live up to their names, right? In terms of things like that. And I'm curious about like some common threads with certain names that are more like assertive or, that type of thing. It's interesting. Yeah. What
I
does
guess
Susan?
I could share on similar front. We're getting there. Danielle and Colby have entered the adoption phase.
Oh,
So they've already picked out the agency they're going to work with and filling out all the paperwork and going to there's so many parenting courses and CPR courses and all these things that they do, but they're really excited and Yeah, we'll see. It feels like you have no control over that process at all. So it feels very like, oh wow. But they're hoping everything might be in place by maybe by like July, where they would be considered live and available, like have everything completed with home studies and all of that. So, and then they could get a match quickly, or it could be a year. So
Oh,
we will keep you updated, but it's very exciting.
That is fantastic. It's all
Is
very
that
exciting.
open to all ages, or are they hoping for like a baby, or do you get to decide that?
Yeah, it is an interesting. I've never been through, not in years, and come alongside someone going through adoption, but you they are hoping for a baby, is their preference, but they're pretty open with a lot of other pieces to it. Um, and interestingly, you also put in like your comfort level with alcohol use or drug use with the mother, or like there's all kinds of things that are discussion pieces that you go through a whole profile. So yeah, so they've done that and put in, what feels like a good fit for them, and then it's just a matter of matching from there. So yeah, so we'll see. That is their preference. They did say they were open to twins, and they did say they were open to triplets. So
wow. Then grandma will have to help.
yeah, that would be a thing. So
Oh,
so anyway, we'll see.
Wow.
Well, if they ever want to connect with someone, I have dear friends who have four kids through adoption
Oh,
and have gone through the process three times because two of them are biological siblings.
okay,
And so they went through it three times and have learned a lot through it. So let me know if you would like to
great.
connect them.
Thank you, Megan.
Absolutely. What else? What other what's happening in people's lives?
Well, I think I told you my son-in-law retired, and so my daughter and son-in-law, there's no predictability to where they are, what they're doing. I had not realized the amount that some structure made a difference until there was no structure. So they're in the midst of that first year of putting all that together, and he got 6 months. Uh, he wanted just to do whatever he felt like for 6 months, and she said yes. And it made her realize how much she kind of likes being around the clubs and people and everything. She liked some structure. So it's been an interesting time. And that ended in February, and he was ready then to go back and spend more time in St. Louis, which is where they've lived most of the time, and get back involved with some, nonprofit work, kind of setting up what retirement will look like in a more structured fashion. So it's been an interesting year and an interesting process, even from, you know, mom's point of view, let alone their point of view. So
Mhm.
that's probably been the big shift in my world.
Yeah, that's been an adjustment for you, for sure,
Yeah.
and for them.
And the other, I just love to mention this book because of our focus. I just read a book called The Color of Everything, and the author is Corey Richards, I believe. And he's a bipolar person, has been, I think, ever, forever and ever. He goes back to his childhood. And he's somebody who became a photographer and was one of those photographers who was also a mountain climber. So he'd be covering National Geographic level climbing Mount Everest and related mountains and all kinds of things around the world. And I think what absolutely amazed me about the book, so I was totally unaware of him as a person. I think that group of people who were into that really knew him, but I wasn't. He talks so overtly about what it's like to be bipolar, how the mind works. Most of the stories are just stories, and you're just going along, and there's a little bit at the end. He really has some issues. where he gets more deeply into the mental health side of it. But I don't think I've ever read a book where somebody who has that situation is just so matter of fact and descriptive about what does that look like. And I just found the book fascinating. It's a very nice read, and it was a fascinating book.
It
Thank
looks
you for
good.
that.
Yeah.
That sounds fabulous. I'm always, it's always so important to understand different, where people are coming from and what they're dealing with and how we can best interact with.
Mhm.
Speaking of books, our book club, our CC book club is reading The Masterful Health and Wellness Coaching, Deepening Your Craft by Michael Arlosky. We'll be meeting in June on June 9th from 3 to 4:30. So would love to chat through that with the group. I plan on actually reading the rest of the chapters. I showed up, I was like, I haven't read it, but I want to listen to the discussion. Actually, a few of us did that. So, and it seemed like it was a great, robust discussion by those who had read it. So, it seems like a great book. So I would highly recommend digging into that. And we have a couple months to get it. We'll be reviewing the second half.
Mhm.
We did the first half the first time.
And then just in addition to that, I could not find it locally. I could not go someplace and physically buy it, but I did finally order it by Amazon. You can get it, but you're probably going to have to get it by mail.
Yes, I got mine by mail. So it's good. It's meaty for sure. Great. It's a great way to kind of circle back to the essence of coaching and truly deepen the craft as the
Mhm.
as the title suggests. So
Mhm.
yeah.
It's well titled.
He's not just blowing smoke.
Right.
So that's good. Well, good. I also want to open up the discussion beyond personal things to coaching, right? Like how are things going in the coaching realm? Things, some of us are busier than others, and so some topics could be how are, any coaching related questions or situations that have come up, any mentor coaching things that have surfaced. I just got to meet with Lee yesterday because I had the recording past the PSA, so we did our annual feedback on the feedback.
Whoa, cool. That's
And
cool.
yeah, and then she asked me for feedback on the feedback that I gave to the I was like, she asked me for feedback on her feedback
Hmm.
based on my feedback to
Hmm.
the client, to the student. Anyway, I'm trying to be funny, but it's I'm stepping
That's very coach-like.
right. It was a lot of feedback happening.
Yeah.
It was good. So that was good. So just I recommend that to you all. It's really a great opportunity to learn and to grow because that's what this is all about. I like to have, we want continuity across the board with the mentor coaching, and so that's nice to hear. I was like, are other coaches saying this too, or am I in a silo? So that was helpful, and yeah. So floor is open. Talk to me about coaching, mentor coaching, what you're doing to further your coaching skills. Tell me.
We should talk about, and this is just something that came from you, Megan. I'm curious if we should eventually have the videos, of your mentoring, of everybody mentoring available to all of us to listen to each other.
Oh, to have the
Y-
feedback available for other people to hear.
Yeah, just because you totally, when you said otherwise we can feel like we're in a silo because we only ever listen to ourselves giving feedback. And I think there's a lot of value in ourselves listening to our own recording because I have to record my feedback that I give to the students at Metro State just because I record the whole class. And that's always eye-opening to listen to myself giving feedback. But I think listening to others give feedback would be really valuable. Unsilo us.
Hmm?
That's a good idea, Sabrina. I will say that, I mean, it's not, I would say, systemically built into the mentor piece right now. However, the
Oh, right,
recordings are there on
right.
GoToMeeting. So it's not like they're not housed for at least our team's use. So it's an interesting idea for personal growth to toggle over to the recordings every so often, take
Yeah.
15 minutes or something to listen to some feedback. I think just a matter if everyone feels comfortable, but there aren't really protective safeguards on those right now for our team anyway.
Right, right.
Yeah, you could listen to recording, but I could see the value in having that be a component.
Right.
Um, just
Where's
as
Brian Allen when we need him? Because he was always wanting
yeah,
something around this, right?
But Lee raises my issue, which comes out of, um, just my background. What are the privacy concerns? I think before we jump into it, we would have to, I would think as a company, we would be more comfortable knowing, are there privacy concerns
mm,
about sharing? I know it's only professional to professional, only within the company, and yet I know that a lot of the mentor coaching I've done has been very personal, very revelatory about the people doing it, and there's a trust factor there. And I just don't know if there are concerns about that on a
Well, we're
legal
very
vulnerability
untrustworthy. You're
level.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Susan, the recordings never for GoToMeeting, they're housed there like for I think a period of time, like 6 months or something, because that's how the system is. But I can see the value in maybe just like if we do explore this further of like listening to maybe I've done a mentor session and someone wants to hear the feedback I gave, someone popping into GoToMeeting and listening to the recording. I think it's just to ask for like permission, like an email that says, "Are you comfortable with Caitlin, listening to feedback? Are you comfortable for your feedback being heard, listened to by any member of our team internally?" Like it would be an internal thing.
And I
But
was
yeah.
thinking more of the people we're coaching. I
Right.
Mm.
was not thinking about us having concerns listening to
They
each
already
other.
have to give
Oh, yes.
permission to it being
Okay.
Yeah,
recorded.
they do. So when they sign
Okay.
up for a listening session, and Robin, you can chime in on this, there is like a little blurb that says that the PSA is recorded, which the PSA and any other session on there, like the whole thing will be recorded. They check that as a way because we have to record it for NBHWC standards for the PSA and for internal purposes. So we do have that little caveat in there of that we may internally use it for
Okay.
something, training or but it doesn't go outside of those parameters. Like
Mhm.
we're not posting it anywhere or anything like that.
Mhm.
But yes, the students do opt in to that confidentiality piece when they sign up for a session.
Okay.
And we all
Thanks.
know if we listen into for bettering our mentor skills, we're not going to be sharing. Like we are HIPAA compl right? Like we are not sharing that. We have on this understanding just drilled into us, right? Like it's not optional.
Right.
So there's that. I wonder if there was a possibility to Lee, if you hear of a session where there was an interesting feedback opportunity and it might be something to share with others, right? Then that could be something you could highlight to us and say, "Oh, I this question came up. I really liked how Caitlin handled this," or something like that. That instead of us just randomly listening to recordings that if you were to highlight, because you get to hear them, and just highlight them to us that we could all benefit from looking.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too. And Caitlin brings up a point in the chat that sometimes, like you said, Megan, that it might not be that it's like a student doing their PSA and maybe another student with a practice session. It may only be the student and the mentor is the client, which is a whole different experience. So I do like the idea of maybe since I have to periodically, listen to the PSA or student practice session, if I note one that's particularly like I would say, oh, this is like a good opportunity
Mm.
to listen to feedback, I could always send like an email as long as everyone's, okay with people listening to feedback. Um, Sending an email saying on, the coaching session from this date in go-to meeting had some insightful feedback or opportunity to listen in. Or if I think it's a good, yeah, different way of giving feedback or particularly clunky moment, maybe, because I think we've all had clunky moments in feedback before. And it's nice to know we're not alone in that too, right? So, yeah, I like that idea as well.
That sounds good. And in this forum, we can also, like you and I just spoke, so it's fresh on my mind in terms of, a situation came up in the recording, which is why I flagged it for Lee. Well, there were a few situations, and one question was how we're not giving feedback to the PSA person anymore.
Mm.
And immediately after the so we did the PSA, we moved right along and moved to the next, which the person was doing her fourth practice session, so it was very robust. And the PSA person was like, I just have to get this off my chest. I was using a new timer and I misread it. And so I messed up the timing because she finished in 20 minutes instead of 30, and it was
Mm.
really bothering her. So I acknowledged what she said and just said, this is one piece of the PSA. We're not expecting a perfect PSA, but you could tell she was still anxious about it. Then later on, the coachee, so the non-PSA person said, is it okay if I give some feedback to the
Mm.
PSA person? And I didn't know what to say because I was like, well, I'm not giving the feedback. But so I allowed it. I said, well, I think that's okay. I just can't give feedback. And the person gave her feedback and whatnot. So Lee and I got to talk about that. And Lee's feedback to me on my feedback was that like it worked out in this circumstance, but generally as a team, we might not want to do that because who knows what that person's going to say. And if the person is like, you killed it, you like were amazing, you changed my life, this was an amazing session, and then they fail, it
Mm.
kind of undermines the process.
Mm.
So that is an important thing I think to share with the whole team that, just as if that comes up in the future in your future PSA
I
recordings.
have thoughts on that.
I
Of
have
course, I have
thoughts on
thoughts on.
that.
Let's talk
Yeah,
about it.
Yeah.
I,
About it.
well, I mean, I think we all know that the students, they can tend to be overly uncritical and like support each other. And so if a student did say, "Oh my gosh, you did a great job. Whatever, you changed my life, whatever they say," that even if that other student fails, that would just be a thing. Like, you all support each other, you care about each other so much, and there's some bias. And I think it's a good place to just be able to just say this is the student's view, but we are always objective looking at it through the mentor coach view. And I think it's okay to state that.
Mhm.
And I do think it is okay for the person being coached to have the opportunity to give feedback because that's very natural. Like we typically want them
Mhm.
to.
Mhm. And I agree with Sabrina from like a teacher point of view. Like that's the only time those two people have an opportunity to say, did what we do touch me? And there's a difference between did what we do touch me and did you do all the technical things you were supposed to do? Like what we're going to be evaluating is all the technical pieces.
Mhm.
But I think it's important to hear that you had an impact on that person, which, you know, might have happened out of non-technical things.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I would be personally more comfortable if there was a way to let the feedback happen where we sort of defined that between them. Like, I think it's very valuable for you to hear from this person what what it felt like to be coached.
Hmm.
Realize that it won't be what's used to evaluate and grade your class. It seems like we could manage that by making a statement of some sort. Um, because we all know they're so nervous taking the PSA that just hearing something back is it just seems like vitally important to them. And yet we want to define, and we don't even have to talk about, of course, you're going to take care of each other and all that. We don't want to get into that
Right.
side
You
of
don't have
it,
to say all
but
that.
just kind of like, let's hear how that went and how that was received, but that isn't what you'll be graded on, kind of a thing.
I have a comment too. First of all, I'd like to hear what the feedback was. Was it good?
It was good.
Okay.
Mhm.
I personally, I think feedback is great, especially from a coach E. And how did that feel? And yeah, and I totally agree with Sabrina how she said it. It was so I'm like ditto because students always give, the easy feedback, right? They're always like, "Oh, you did a great job." But if it was accurate, I don't know. I just agree with Sabrina and Susan. I think we should let them
I I
if
feel
they
like
ask.
yeah, and I feel like doing a double-sided reflection. On the one side, on the one hand, I think
Perfect.
Yes, and
it's a great opportunity for
yeah,
them to express how it felt. And I do feel that it could misguide the person who was coaching to feeling like they crushed it and then be devastated if they
but
get
that's on
results.
the yeah, and that's on the student side versus the mentor side. Right? We can just
Right.
say, "Oh, that's what
But
the student says, but this is what we're grading on is based upon the mentor side."
right, right. I just feel like it could get touchy. Yeah,
We
Mhm.
I think
just
it's a
okay, but I feel like we can't control how people are going to feel. Okay,
Mhm.
like let's
right.
let's let's not like come on, like right?
Right. Oh
Like
well.
Well,
that's
I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, I do know that people can get disgruntled. And I think from the perspective of making sure that the program gets good reviews and that
Mhm.
everything is is feeling good for when they graduate or don't graduate, and I think that it could set up for someone being disgruntled. That's it maybe wouldn't always, but it could definitely do that. So I think it's something to definitely consider a little deeper.
And I guess what I also define for them about this whole setting, and usually it doesn't not even necessarily in the PSA, but this mentor coaching is an opportunity for you to be a client and to understand what it feels like to be a client. And that's an opportunity to understand what we're delivering. Um, and yeah, I think you could run into a person here and there who's like, I liked what my client said better than I liked what my evaluator said. But I think by and large, people can hear like, let's use this to understand what it feels like to be a client without thinking that that's going to be your grade. I think
Right.
that's the distinction we have to be sure that we're making if we allow that kind of feedback is there's feedback and there's grading and that they're two different things.
Mhm.
Hmm. But an individual could definitely get very excited when they're hearing all this
Sure,
positive stuff.
sure.
And then they're like, I crushed this,
Right,
Well,
And then,
expectations can be set too.
hmm
right, right.
hmm hmm
It's tricky.
it's
Important.
tricky. It would
Yeah.
have to be framed. It would have to be framed.
So, out of
It is
curiosity,
important
does this
distinction. I just want to make sure we hear from Lee and Robin too, because they
Are in the
are the
middle of it.
ones who have to deliver the news, right? And I think that piece is what we don't understand as
Hmm.
much, right?
Hmm.
So I want to give the floor to them as well.
Yes. So I will say, so I hear you all in that it's uncomfortable not to give feedback in this component when they've gotten 3 or 4 opportunities in previous practice sessions to receive oral feedback. It's an adjustment. The reason we shifted it and are exploring this style is from what we've talked about a little bit in this conversation is if the student does not pass, and based on feedback from the fellow student or the mentor, even if it's great job today, it doesn't even have to be large, but the expectation in the student's mind is that they pass, and then they hear from me that they don't pass. It's a slippery slope of a conversation. And like so our goal with exploring this idea of no feedback for the PSA was to create more of an alignment to support the mentors, to support the process if they pass or fail, because we did have a few instances when people didn't pass that there was that abrasive conflict of, well, I received this feedback and I thought things went really well. And it's a hard thing to pull back from in those instances. And so that's why we're kind of exploring this idea of not giving feedback, but also not having it be like this abrupt transition where there's like silence and then you just move on. So there is that example in the mentor guidebook, and I wouldn't say that it's perfect. It was a first kind of explorative pass at it of how to transition between like a PSA, set the expectation in the beginning, like at the beginning of the PSA, the expectation is they won't receive verbal feedback and they will receive extensive written feedback once they pass their PSA in the rubric, and then having that PSA performed, and then the mentor having the opportunity to help them feel more grounded as they transition into the potential client of the next coach. So, one thing that I would say Megan and I talked about was, and I've done in sessions too, is this transition period. So, I've said something like in a PSA, for example, one was at like ended at 9 o'clock at night. So I said, you know, you have gotten to the other side of this evening. And it can feel like a lot of different emotions when you've gone through a practical skills assessment. So I'd like you to take an opportunity to do whatever you feel would help you feel grounded as you transition into switching roles and hats for being a client for your fellow colleague. And so some people have taken, a break for a minute. Some people have gone to the bathroom. Some people have gotten a sip of water, but I think it allows them to hear something and the affirmation of like, oh my gosh, I just did this thing and it's scary and overwhelming. And so a period of time to transition. So we did talk about that instead of having it just be like, okay, we're moving on and there's no, acknowledgement of how they're feeling at all. Our goal is to just not have the student have such a high expectation that when they don't receive the best news, they're not disgruntled, they're not frustrated, they don't potentially not want to do their PSA again. So that's what we're kind of teetering on is exploring how to do that better. Um, and yeah, I mean, in regards to fellow students giving feedback on their experience as the client, I think that's super valuable feedback. And I also know examples of that's when where the student has the expectation that they did really well, and then the mentor is like, okay, how do I transition from the client saying that was the best coaching session I've ever had, and then the mentor is like, you did a really great job, and then it's just kind of like this propelled positivity for them to turn around and receive a score of a 52 or something like that, if that makes sense. um, so we're working on it. And we're open to feedback. But I hope that gives a bigger picture of why we made that adjustment, because it is more on the back end piece. And we don't want mentors to be in a position that feels like they've set an expectation that then we have a different communication on with the student, because then that doesn't feel like we're in alignment as a team. So we're trying to build that alignment and awareness together.
Mhm. So,
Uh,
Lee, a question. As we
yeah.
lead into the PSA, then
Mhm.
do we just, as we lead in, say this is more formal, graded, makes a difference? So we will be approaching it a little differently than you've done in your priors. Are we setting that up as we start?
Yeah, I think that the setting the stage of, you know, Susan, I'm under the understanding that this is your PSA today. We will have you go first. It will be a little different than previous practice sessions you've had, given there will be no verbal feedback given at the end. And then we'll transition if there's another student on to the opportunity for them to coach and you to be the client. And we'll have a transition period for that. But
Mhm.
just noting that it'll be a little different today. And you could start whenever you're ready.
Mm.
And yeah, you'll have 30 minutes. Kind of so setting the stage then, setting expectation again between the transition, I think is important. Take a moment to take a drink of water, just a reminder. There won't be verbal feedback. I'll be working on the scored rubric. You'll hear from Robin or Lee within 48 hours. So it gives that like a note again, there's no feedback. So I think that it's less likely that a client or a coach will say, please let me say something, right? Because at least you're giving them something to
Mhm.
be in an expectation of what the expectation is from the mentor. So yes,
Mhm.
I'd say at the beginning, the middle, and the end. Um, so
So I'm hearing in a perfect scenario, we're really not wanting to open that can of worms, so to speak.
yeah, I would say so. And I hear, Cindy, I hear you, I hear Sabrina that like the client's opportunity to have feedback and Susan too, um, allows for that affirmation of like the coach feeling like, yeah, I made a difference in this person. I had a good session. It's just exploring how and if that can be an approach that's made in the PSA without it impacting the back end of the rubric and the finalization of the training for them. That's where it stemmed from.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Hmm.
Right. Because my PSA person was worried about the fact that she mistimed her PSA, right?
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
she said, "Oh, I need to just say this. I need to get it off my chest." Even though I had set this, like everyone knew there was not going to be any feedback from the beginning, but then we could all sense she was uncomfortable with that part of it. And so I think, the coachee wanted to give her some feedback, right? And they are used to giving and getting feedback along the way until the PSA. So there was, I think I just was curious because that was my first PSA since the new changes.
Mhm.
And I was curious to know if anyone else had had that where the
So
client asked to give feedback to their PSA person, can so
I just I do want to say like the worry that that student had for ending short, that's, just because you feel worried, like the feeling is okay. Like, right? Like it's her feeling. And I just watched some chef show yesterday, and the person did not plate their second dessert, and they failed because they didn't, right? So I'm like, I'm just gonna be like, I get it. Like, I get, like, definitely say, like, okay, take a breath. Like, take a breath. Yes, you finished early, a little bit early.
right.
It,
And that's what I said. I was like, you did. And that's okay. It's one part of the PSA. We
Mhm.
Right.
don't, it's one part, right? So
Mhm.
Mhm.
I
Can
think
I,
that prompted the need for the client to
yeah.
give her own separate feedback apart from
Mhm.
Can,
it, right?
can I
So,
ask a question about the 20-minute thing? I know it's only one thing that we grade on the rubric, but doesn't the board require it to be 30 minutes? So wouldn't that be a fail for it to be so considerably less in time, Lee? In my mind, that doesn't meet the general requirements for the PSA that the board sets.
But I think that's just one piece the board sets. I don't think it's pass fail. I don't think you'd have to see how many points they assign to that issue. So
Well,
all it
we
is you're not going to make the points that have to do with going for 30 minutes. You might have been absolutely excellent on everything else, so you got all your other points. It wouldn't be a pass fail situation. It would be a loss of that particular topic
well, that's our
points.
rubric, but I'm asking,
Right.
is you're understanding what I'm asking, Lee?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, I get to, yeah, but yeah.
I'll have to go back and look at the MBHWC, but I mean, our rubric is based off of their template of sorry. I mean, every program has a different kind of PSA, but it's based off of same standards. We just have different verbiage, phrasing, categories maybe outlined. It all encompasses the same thing. There is the expectation that the practice sessions are 30 minutes. I think it's from a time standpoint in like the amount of allocated hours for the program and what that like, constitutes. Um, because I don't think that if it had to be exactly 30 minutes, our PSA would have the 25 to 30 minute for the proficient, the
Mm,
tw like less than 20 minutes or more than 30 minutes for the 0 to 1 category, right? Um, but it is a good question because, I haven't seen anything that says it has to be exactly 30 or they automatically fail.
right.
Um,
Mhm.
and I would say if
Right.
that's
And
the case, it wouldn't reflect that way in our PSA. Like it would be reflected differently.
reflected differently in the
Hmm.
PSA. Yeah, I was just curious because
But
they've been pretty like that change happened. And I
right,
just was wondering if like only doing 2/3 of the time, that's significant, right? Like you cut
right,
out a third of the time that's required. Would that in their eyes still be a pass?
right. And that is a good question, Chris. And I'll look into it just to make sure. But right now I'm under the impression that it's not like an automatic they didn't pass. But
Okay.
if that is different, then I will let you all know.
Yeah,
I
that would
will
be good to
say,
know. Thank you.
yeah, when you when the coach finishes in 20 minutes, there may be just less time for them to execute the skills, right? Like they may not
Mhm.
get to everything.
Mm, mm-hmm.
So that then in turn probably equates to a different score if they
Mhm.
have a third of the time that they haven't utilized for skills.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
She still managed to pass, though. I'll just like believe you all. She managed
In
to
those 20 minutes, she did a lot.
fit it in. She got a 0 for timing, but
She did. But yes, good question, Chris. I will make sure to look at that.
Thanks.
yeah, I didn't even think about that
Mhm.
being a deal breaker on pass fail.
Mhm.
You wouldn't think it because we're scoring on the rubric. And so
Mhm.
Right.
you could get a 0 on that
Right. But that's
skill.
our rubric. I'm saying,
Right.
d
Right.
Hmm.
does
Right.
the
Sure.
board see it as something else? Like,
I
that
don't
Right.
think so,
I
but
don't think so either.
yeah, I
okay.
don't
But
I
I'll
don't think
look
so.
just to make sure.
Interesting.
It would probably be very apparent if it was like,
Yeah.
it had to be
Like you
25,
must
Mm,
fail the
25
student.
plus minutes,
Right.
like, or else they don't, it's like any other maybe practicum or something.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Mhm.
like if it's automatically like driver's test, like you don't do like, I don't know, a parallel park and like it's game over.
It's
Like,
game over.
yeah. So, but I'll look.
Okay.
And I
Like
appreciate all your
second
feedback.
dish.
Yeah.
That's it.
I appreciate. Okay, so after I am curious because I am on the other side of like the mentor, like the grading and the rubric and the feedback. And how are you all feeling about the conversation we've had about it? And I'm obviously taking in all of the feedback that you're giving around feedback.
I think there's a lot to discuss before we just open up everybody to listen to everybody's sessions.
Right. Yep. 100% heard on that.
Mhm.
How about the no feedback on PSA?
Yeah, I get the position you're in, and I get the range of kinds of people we can have and how they're emotionally invested in hearing what they want to hear, which is just a very human reaction. So I definitely empathize with you, and I just know it's more my personal value system that people should talk to each other, you know.
Right. Right.
So I get, that I'm not
Yeah.
in your spot as you're having to deal with that.
Maybe there's a middle ground, and Caitlin, yeah, I'd love to hear. But maybe there is a middle ground of like a very specific thing we could frame for feedback in a PSA that gives the client maybe the opportunity to say like one thing about the experience, but I think it'd have to be pretty specific that would give some specific feedback without it attributing to some scoring or anything like that.
Mhm.
'Cause that's the
Mhm.
slippery slope. But
Yeah.
Well, I think it's all about expectations. And I see the position that you're in.
Mhm.
And what's the percentage? I mean, I see what we're trying to solve. I'm just wondering, is this like, 80% of the time that these people are so disgruntled and they're going, what? I thought I totally did a great job. I mean, what's the percentage? You know,
uh
is it like 1% or is it
Of
50?
of when they fail.
like
Yeah.
of people who fail, are they
And they're,
disgruntled when they fail? Kind of.
yeah,
No, are
like,
they surprised?
are
Oh,
they
like are they
shocked? Yeah.
Oh, um I would say out of the past 4 conversations I've had, two of them have been on the one of them was more on the, I would say, extreme disgruntlement
Mm.
side. One was more on the surprised, thought they passed based on feedback side. So that's 50% if you're looking at the four. The one of the other on the other half, one of them uh kind of knew that they didn't do well. That's the best case scenario, right? I'm like, okay, this is great. We can have, coach development and conversation. And then the other one was neutral. Like they didn't think they knocked it out of the park. They thought they did pretty well. But yeah, so I'd say 52 out of the four were
Wow.
I
pretty.
mean, I
So
kind
out
of
of
get, I will say, I mean, I kind of get, I get why we're doing this, but I also say we cannot control how people receive their grade.
Right.
So I take a big breath when I say that, right? Because I don't want to sit there and think we're having to accommodate people that
their
don't know
feelings are
how to
hurt.
receive
To
feedback.
misunderstand. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I
It's an
think some people will just never
uncomfortable,
be. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Cindy.
it's an uncomfortable situation. It's
Mhm.
awkward. It stinks. Okay, you flunked. No one likes to flunk,
Right.
right?
Right.
So of
Right.
course, but if it's based upon the mentor's feedback that they're like shocked, I mean, I don't, I don't know. I don't know.
It's hard.
It just seems like I'm wondering if we're making a mountain out of a molehill.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I didn't know what the percentage was. And if it's, I'm not in your shoes, Lee, so I can't really, but it just seems like feedback is so good for people. How did that coachy feel? I always ask my clients, how did this
Right,
session go for you?
exactly.
And if they
Right.
go, man, it sucked, I'll be like, oh, well,
Thank
But
you
dang.
for telling
but
me.
they're gonna
Yeah,
get
thank
they're
you
gonna
for
get
telling me.
extensive feedback.
Hmm.
They're gonna get extensive feedback in writing. So it's
Yeah.
not like they're not gonna have it. But I've seen a disgruntled person before,
Okay.
and
Well,
I'll
they're
tell
out
you,
there
I think I agree with holding off on
on feedback.
or having or framing it in such a way that really nothing can be misconstrued, because again, we're trying to protect the reputation of this program, and if people leave here pissed off then then we're not serving our the people who are part of the program, and we're not serving the reputation of the program. We want people to
Right.
feel good.
Yeah. But I guess you
Well,
don't, like, back to Sabrina's point, you can't control how people are going to feel. Because if I think
right.
back over the ones who even at I knew were not going to make it and were not going to be happy about not making it, they came more from a position of, I know I'm great and I know my methods are fine. They came from more a position of, I don't want to hear it, than feeling, they had already decided they were fabulous.
Right, right.
And so feedback
And
did
you're
not make
not.
any difference to them because they were sure as they came in that they nailed it.
Hmm. But
And
this,
so that
yeah.
person is going to leave disgruntled anyway because they just don't, the way they look at things, they're fine and they don't want to hear that they're not fine.
And
I don't
they'll
know.
and they'll
And I
probably
think those are the only kinds that I'm aware of as I think back through my sessions that at least at the time that we were talking, I knew they were going to be unhappy that they failed. Again, I'm not in Lee's position of actually have to
Right.
tell them that, but yeah, you can't make any system where you can guarantee
No,
everybody
no.
leaves basically supportive, happy, and saying nice things about you.
But this gives Lee an opportunity to do it in a controlled environment versus
Yeah,
having someone be
we're
like,
not
"You
creating
were
problems for her.
amazing!" Like,
Yeah,
"Oh my God, this was the best!" And then
yeah.
poor Lee has to say they flunked. I don't know. I mean,
I'm
it's
okay with it. Send them to me. I
Yeah,
will just,
Sabrina will
oh,
handle
I'll tell them.
it. She's got the method down.
I wouldn't say it's a matter of not being comfortable giving them, but I think it's the alignment of our team of like,
Yep.
okay,
Right,
so I'm in a position where, or
right.
maybe, someone else in our team, position where it's not only like I've regraded the rubric, and so I've got that, I've got the mentor's feedback, so I'm in a position where I'm like, holding space for the feedback that I have from my review, the mentor's feedback, right?
Hmm.
So it's like
Hmm.
I have all of that has to be in alignment, I think, to
Hmm.
have an aligned front. And then
Hmm.
that like, and yeah, I feel fine telling people that they didn't do well. They didn't
Of
pass. Like,
course,
I mean,
yeah.
not that I like, it's not my favorite thing, but it's like, I think
No,
it's a matter of when things feel like mis misaligned.
disjointed.
Like
Right.
the
Right.
yeah, like if
Right.
my
Yep.
feedback's going to be different than the mentor, but I of course am never going to want to put a mentor in a position where we're not in alignment. So I'm like, oh yeah, the mentor didn't do this right. Like I never want to like say that, right? I want to be in alignment as a team so that the person when I'm giving the feedback to the student, they're like, based on your PSA and the feedback and then my review of the feedback, this is the feedback from your PSA of things
Hmm.
that didn't go
Hmm.
well to ultimately result in you not passing. That becomes harder when there's this nuanced conversation in the session that's not aligned with the rubric feedback. That's where like I think the disconnection comes. Is like,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
then
$100%.
they see the rubric and they're like, "What do you mean Tammy said that I didn't do any of this? Like she said I did a good
So I'm
job
going
at
to
the
go
end."
back to,
So I
aren't we talking about letting the client give feedback?
Yes.
think we were
Yes.
talking. Yes,
Okay. And isn't this recorded?
yes,
Hmm.
Yes. So doesn't the student get to hear the recording
Hmm.
based on, and do they never get to hear the recording when they don't pass?
it
So they don't get to hear, like so let's say they don't pass.
right.
Right. And let's say the other client gives them feedback. They don't get to hear how they coached.
It depends on the student. So
Okay.
the
Okay.
process is Robin gets the rubric that the student didn't pass, or sometimes I'm loop CC'd on that email. And then the I review the recording. Then I reach out to the student via email and outline the next step as being them and myself connecting.
Okay.
And sometimes that results in if they ask about the rubric, then I may send the failed rubric. If they usually it
Oh,
starts
it
with a
just
conversation
depends. Okay.
about the feedback. And then if they've asked about the rubric ahead of time, we consider sending them that.
Okay.
If they ask specifically about listening to the recording, we do take that into consideration. Like there's one instance where a student did ask for that because that was the way that they were going to understand what
Hmm.
happened in their session.
So that's, yeah, I was
So we
thinking
kind of
maybe
meet them
that
where
was
they are.
common. Okay. Because,
Mm,
then they can objectively
right, right,
list, like the evidence exists for them to listen to how they did
Right.
and compare it to the score.
Hmm.
right.
But it's the incongruency. What I'm hearing Lee say is when there's inconsistent things being said
Hmm.
or inconsistent information, it just makes it that much harder.
Hmm.
Am I saying that rightly?
Yeah, I would say so. And like and Cindy's point, and several others to the client feedback, I think that's where there's that opportunity for the coach to come away with an expectation. And that's not something, not that we want to control every environment, but that's one piece that can open up this can of worms
Yep.
for
Yeah.
expectation.
I think that's the right phrase for that.
In
Yeah.
this setting, knowing that like the practice sessions they have prior, they get 15 minutes of verbal feedback, and then they don't get written feedback, practice sessions
Hmm.
1 through 4. So the only feedback they're getting is verbal from you all. Then in the PSA, they get extensive written feedback once they've passed in that rubric. So it's a shift in how you're giving feedback essentially, but you're not giving feedback. It just leaves the client out of
Hmm.
that, which is what I think you guys are
Hmm.
wanting to
Yeah, I
figure out
think I
exploration
think
around.
yeah, I think
Great
the
feedback.
mentor not giving feedback is fine, as long as, it's said out in the beginning, that's totally fine. But when the coachee says, "Hey, can I give a little feedback?" I'd been like, "Absolutely. Go for it," because that's who's receiving our services.
Hmm.
Right? And that is good information. And she might have said, it really didn't go well. I really felt rushed here. I wish we would have had 10 minutes there. That would have been great feedback, right? For but as long as we don't give the information, and as long as, I think if Megan gave um, the expectation of this is my feedback, now I have to write it, I have to write it up,
Mhm.
based upon the rubric, it's just about expectations. And
Mhm.
it's our role in the PSA. I don't mentor anymore, so I don't even know why I'm even speaking to this, but I always have an opinion about something. But I think that getting feedback is just stinking important, especially from
It seems to me we're kind of what we're coming to is
a dead horse.
um, you know, what's
Philosophy.
for the person doing the PSA, what am I going to grab onto that makes me feel good as compared to having an overall assessment of how did this whole thing go. So that's the vulnerability that if anybody says I did fabulously, I'm going to hang on to that and think I'm fine. Um, and then on the other side, just doing a very clear expectation, like, okay, everything leading up to this, everything has been less formal. This is formal. Because it's formal, there are going to be different rules about it. And to set that awareness at the beginning, because for me, like if the client comes in and says things like "Ooh, fabulous, fabulous, fabulous," I can then, if I am allowed to have feedback too, I can say, "Well, now what about this that you brought up that wasn't brought out?" I can take that positive feedback and tone it back if it's overstated. If I'm not allowed to do feedback, then that's not going to happen. They're just going to hear from the client like, "Oh, you were wonderful," and then they're going to hit Lee and go, "What do you mean?" So it's just it's human and complicated, I guess, is what it comes down to.
It is. That's a
Yeah.
really good point. And just in the interest of time, I'll
Yeah.
just summarize for us because this has been so robust and we are such a robust group, right? Where everyone has really important feedback on the feedback. So
On the
it
feedback,
sounds
on the
like we
feedback, on
are
the feedback.
all aligned in terms of we are not offering feedback to the PSA, right? We set the tone early, we reiterate it and allow the PSA coach to get, a reset after doing it. And then if we don't prompt this, but if a client wants to give feedback, that's where the nuance is. That's where we will let Lee and Robin and Susanna go away and come back and talk to and return to us about because that could be an area where we say you can give feedback and you should know that feedback from a someone who's just been coached is not the same as what I'm looking at through the lens of the rubric. And if we
Mhm.
that way, then that might be a solution to tamper the expectations. And to Susan's point, some people just might have rose-colored glasses about themselves no matter what, and no matter if the feedback has been given or not from the coachee. So you're into difficult conversations regardless. So there's a little summary, little like I think we're all here for the client, right? We're all here for our students
Mm-hmm.
and for helping them to feel heard. They've had feedback along the way. This isn't necessarily the time for that, but if it organically happens, that might be a way to navigate that.
Yeah, and this is almost like a business decision, like it's a business philosophy type of thing of how Brad and Susanna you know, want to present this at this stage.
Mhm.
And, it's
Mhm.
like it's a robust conversation that we all have, and it's great for them to hear this, but ultimately it's really a business decision.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So we'll leave it with you. This is important. Good feedback on the
Well,
feedback.
bless Lee.
Thank you. And I do appreciate your feedback on the feedback.
On the feedback, on the feedback, on the feedback. Uh,
Stuff, everyone. Well, people feel free to stay on, but I'm going to end the recording and appreciate everyone's important input. Have a
I
great
did
Bye.
have one thing,
Thank you.
Caitlin. Are
Oh,
you still
yes.
on? I know
Yes.
you raised your hand earlier and I felt like we
Oh.
didn't get to it.